Coming up on this episode, ask the question, can we change? And deeper than this, how do we change in the first place? Why do we change? Do we want to change? And if so, what are the things that are involved? There is so much that is kind of misconceived in terms of change. Like the old saying, the leopard never changes its spots. We're not leopards. So take some time and sit with me while we think about how we change and the different things that are involved in that journey. I know for me it's been valuable to sit down and kind of go down this train of thought, not just now, but at various points in my life, and ask myself the deeper questions to why I want to change or why I want life to change. Because sometimes those ideas are superficial, and it's important to kind of cancel those out so you can really focus on what you do want, why you want to change, and kind of becoming the best version of yourself. Because beyond anything, you deserve that, no? So let's go get into this episode and ask ourselves the question, can we change? What's going on, beautiful people? This is the Perspective Chaser podcast, and I'm your host, John. On this episode, I'm thinking about the idea of can we change? And as always, I'm going to try to come at it from a few different angles and use myself as the proverbial guinea pig. But I think there is a lot of kind of benefit to taking this time to actually think about the ideas of change and how we go about it. Because there's a lot of life that is desired but kind of out of reach in a sense. And yeah, I suppose that's a bit vague, but you can put a lot of different focuses on life and you could put a lot of different kind of situations into this, so it's hard not to be vague. So I'll give you an example. For example, if you're currently unfit or if you're unemployed or whatever else, if you actually sit down and think about how can I attain those goals? How can I enter that world that I'm not in? If it's you want to step up financially or in terms of relationships or career or whatever else, you need to have the idea of what you want first and then work backwards to how you get it. At least that's what's always worked best for me. Because, I mean, you need to know where you're going in order to how to get there, no? And it kind of makes sense, at least to me, to run it through that kind of process. Like, where do I want to be and what does it, or what is it going to take for me to get there? And by taking that time, you kind of give yourself a step-by-step guide. And at first, sometimes those steps are a bit too big. So you need to take another thing. Okay, cool, that's the goal. How do I work backwards from there? And you keep doing this until you find something that is manageable for you. And you keep doing that and you keep kind of building it up over time until you do become different. But then it casts my mind back to when I was a personal trainer, and it's like that similar concept, but it's kind of stabilizers for life, whether it be a personal trainer, a counselor, a nutritionist, or whatever else. It's somebody that's there in the world to guide you towards the kind of getting in your own groove and living in your best vein or whatever else. So it is attainable. We can change, but sometimes we just need a bit of help to do so. It's just about learning those lessons, getting those tools, and I mean, yeah, it doesn't come for free. You've got to put in the effort, go out and get it, go to those PT sessions, go to those therapy sessions, go to those business meetings or workshops or whatever it may be. But if you do the work over time, you will change. So it is possible to change. But then you've got to ask yourself, why? Because a lot of the time, our ideas may not always be our own. Ask yourself, do you actually want to change for you? I've always had this idea of myself that I'll never change for somebody else unless I want to change for myself. Because if they want to change me, that's their ideas. Da, 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 da. I don't know if I'm going to be happy like that. Like, let's say, for example, I got with somebody and they wanted me to constantly wear colourful t-shirts. Like, that's not me. And if I didn't feel comfortable in a colourful t-shirt, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay like I am. And I know that's a really fleeting kind of analogy, but hey, I'm looking at myself here. But yeah, so when you kind of take that time to ask yourself, why do you even want to change in the first place? Sometimes the want isn't deep enough for you to go through all of that effort to change, and that's okay. But then again, there's so many more questions that come out of that. Why do you want to change? Do you want to change for yourself or do you want to change for somebody else? Like, there's so many different kind of, well, I suppose there's only a couple, either yourself or somebody else, or maybe the world. But there are, I don't know, there's so much going on in the world that everything seems to be a possibility. Like something, eh, the amount of different things that are happening in the world at the same time, it's kind of mind-boggling to think about. Like while I'm sitting here talking about this, somebody's probably coming into the world, somebody's probably leaving the world. Countless things are happening in between. Somebody's just had their birthday, somebody's just celebrated a wedding, and this, that, and everything else. Like there is so much that is happening simultaneously that we are unaware of. So now, if you want to change where you're at, you just got to change where your attention is. Because chances are, what you want to do or who you want to be or whatever else, there's some idea of it already out there in the world. So, like, it's not to say it's going to be an exact mirror copy, but there is ideas that you can chase. Like I say, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be a podcaster, a social media influencer, or whatever else, no matter what you want to do in life, there are examples out there for you to follow. They may not give you the full recipe. They give you ingredients. And if you put in the effort and you collect all your ingredients and you experiment a little bit, you might get it wrong a few times. You'll find your way over time. But like the idea of doing 100 episodes, until you kind of set that benchmark that is quite a lot of effort and takes a fair bit of time, it's hard to understand if you really want to do it. So sometimes you need to kind of check yourself and see if you actually do want to change. Do you want it bad enough? Because sometimes we don't. Like sometimes our reasons for wanting something are superficial. They're just meh. That's all right. But I, I, I was doing this the other day when I was going shopping to go on a bit of a tangent, I guess. I was going around and I was looking at things on the shelves and I was just looking for unnecessary stuff that I didn't go in there for. Now I was asking myself, like, why am I doing this? Like, but then there's this kind of idea of indulgence and everything else where it's like, I kind of want to indulge at the minute. And whether that be, I said on previous episodes with food and everything else, like oh, excuse me, whether it be with food and all of that at the minute, or I don't know, like something's just like indulge, but I don't know what to indulge in for the most part. So then it's just empty indulging. And I literally had to stop myself from doing it the other day. I was just like, no, John, you're being ridiculous. Like, there is no point in this. Just get on with your day. And sometimes we have to do that with our wants to change, or sometimes our dreams as well. Like, back in the day, me and Dave wanted to open a security company. And was it a dream? Not really. It was a kind of means to an end. Like, I've always had this idea of wanting to work for myself. But over time, that idea has changed. And it's always the only thing that stayed consistent over time is me wanting to have my own little enterprise. Like, obviously, the podcast means a little bit more because there's so much opportunity for me to grow personally. Like, once I start talking to other people from all around the world, that opens up a whole new realm of conversation. I'll learn so much about myself, about life, about the world. There's so much variety there. But you have to start as you can, basically, and build up over time. Like it can always change over time. Like at the minute, I've kind of had this idea in my head that the podcast is very kind of backwards self-help. But that's just because that's what I'm going through. Like the podcast is a reflection of myself. So you go back through it, you can see where my headspace has been up, it's been down, and how I've tried to kind of bring my inner monologue out and explain what's going on and how I get through each situation, or sometimes just suffering. Like sometimes we have to just push through, but if anything, it proves to show you that it doesn't last forever. Like I've got episodes where I'm buzzing and I'm in a great mood, and I've got episodes where I'm got a headache and I barely want to hear myself speak. So that we always kind of fluctuate. And I see this video from another content creator, and I forget how to pronounce his name exactly, so I'm not gonna. But I really do appreciate your content. Um, he's basically saying, like, not saying, like, he was showing behind the scenes of his own content and kind of how it is when it's not all perfect. And I think that's so valuable for people to see because life ain't perfect. We ain't perfect. Like, but it's so easy to portray that. And in the field that he's in, healing communication and everything else, so to see them, for people to see that the communication isn't always perfect, I think was a valuable thing, especially coming from somebody that is a communicator. Like, it's like the idea of, what is it? Is it white coat syndrome, where people think because somebody's in a lab coat that they're instantly smart. Same thing with glasses, which hopefully works in my favor, but probably not. That if some English accent as well, sort of to the Americans, but I don't know. Um, there are certain things that can kind of manipulate your perception of the world. And because you see something a certain way that you think it is a certain way. So you think, okay, because they're in a lab coat or because they have glasses or because they've got a fancy accent, that they have a higher level than yourself in web, either like society or intelligence or authority, whatever it may be. That's just your perception. And again, it goes to show you that things can change, your ideas can change. Like the idea of stepping behind the curtain in terms of like becoming a podcaster and seeing how everything kind of comes together. I now view content very different when I go into security and see kind of behind the no access parts and all of that stuff. Like in your head, you're like, oh, I wonder what's there. Da, 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 da. It's just another room. A majority of the time, it is something incredibly boring that your mind would have probably skipped over in its very first thought. But our minds build things up. So even when we come back to the idea of change, to kind of come back off the tangent, like sometimes we build this idea of change up to be something monumental. And it doesn't have to be by any means. Like if you work backwards and you break it down into small steps, there you go, you'll get there slowly. If those small steps are too big, break it down even further. Make your goals your sub goals or your sub goals goals and keep building up. Like it gets better over time. I don't know exactly how long. Like in every instance, it's going to be different. No matter what you're fighting, no matter what your reason for change is, it's going to take you some time to change. No matter, it depends how much you want to change. Where are you starting from and where you want to get to? But these are all things that we need to sit down and think about if we genuinely want to change. Like when I sat down and started thinking about like this podcast and everything else, the idea of what I needed compared to the reality of it, two different things. Like, and there are still things that I want and things I want to develop and behind the scenes things that kind of need work and need improvement and this, that, and everything else. But if I didn't start where I did, if I held off until it was all perfect, until I felt that it met all the criteria so I can do it and I can change from being John, the just day to day, da da da, to John the podcaster, I'd still wouldn't be doing this. Like, no way. Like, if I would have asked myself, like, how do I start? How do I make time to do it and everything else? There would have been no way that I would have ever started because the reality is there's no right time. Kind of like what people say about kids. There's no right time. Like, once it happens, you find your way. So if you start, you find your way to manage. Like, sometimes these episodes I'm recording days in advance. Sometimes I'm recording them last minute. Sometimes life gets hectic. But it kind of ebbs and flows and you find your middle ground. And like even after all of this time, I'm thinking about changing the time that I upload the episodes just to kind of fit life a little bit better because I set that time when I first started this way back when, which seems mad now. And I've never changed that. And I've always tried to meet that criteria, but life's changed in that time. So I need to change and things need to kind of ebb and flow with life. Like if I push back the regular upload time a couple of hours, that alleviates a lot of pressure off of my life. It kind of gives me a little bit more time for kind of technical difficulties and things like that that I seem to kind of keep biting my head into these days. Like, but if I'd have never started, I'd have never realized that. And it's that kind of thing you just climatize over time. You get there, and I don't know, change comes slow. Sometimes it comes fast, but for me, it's rare for it to come fast. But again, it depends on what realm of life you're talking about. Like, there are so many aspects where sometimes the world just seems like it's moving way too fast. And then there's other aspects of the life where it's just like, my God, the world moves slow. I mean, truth be told, both are true all the time. It just depends on you. Like, there are 7, 8 billion people around the world doing things simultaneously. They may be awake, they may be asleep, they may be whatever else. So, like, to think that you can only actions, I think it's kind of nuts to me. Like I say, like, there's literally billions of people doing stuff around the world right now, and I'm not aware of any of them, and they're not aware of me. That's so nuts. Like, and that's even in the modern world where we're as connected as we are. Like, think about even 50 years ago where we're far less connected. Like, the world, I don't know if the world is getting smaller. Like, it's one of those things where I don't know if any one person could perceive the whole world as it actually is. Like, other than maybe if you went out into space and could see it, but that's a whole nother tangent which I'm not going to get into today. But to think, like, all of these people are doing different things around the world. Like, some people are starting up businesses, some people are just having dinner, some people are retiring, some people are doing whatever else, just going swimming, like, just enjoying life. Some people are doing groundbreaking medical research, and other people are doing insane mathematical equations and trying to advance tech or launching rockets into space. Like, there is so much going on simultaneously. Yet we're only ever aware of ourselves, really. Like, you can be in a crowd of people, but even then, how much are you aware of them? Like, you can perceive them, yes, but you don't know their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions. Are they hot? Are they cold? Are they hungry? Are they happy, sad? What is it? Do you know what I mean? Like, so, I've gone on another tangent. Well, this is the thing, like, there is only so much that we're aware of. And you kind of got to figure it out as you go. Like, there's so many people that will sell you the blueprint. And I think that's the difference between like a good coach in any sense, whether it be like a personal trainer, a therapist, a nutritionist, whatever aspect of life that you want to look at. Like, anybody that is trying to help you become a better version of yourself, I think kind of falls into this same kind of groove where they a good one will give you the tools with the understanding that there's variabilities. Like, these won't always apply. Like, to try to make it a bit more specific, like, if you're a personal trainer, everybody has a specific range of motion. And yes, that can change over time, but everybody's going to start at a specific place. So you work with them. So take a simple squat, for example. Not everybody could squat to 90 degrees. So some people you have to start off slowly and build them up, and it's fine. Use a platform, use a box, whatever else. Like, there's methods to build them up and find that place. Like, everybody has to figure out their own starting place. Not all of us can just take a year out and figure ourselves out. Not all of us can just stop everything and start a business or eat hot dogs every day and live in our car to get things done. Everybody's reality is slightly different. So, well, sometimes drastically different. Most of the time, drastically different, John. But this is the thing, like, we've all kind of got to experience stuff from ourselves. There is commonalities, there are things that you can learn from other people and things that you can kind of take, whether it be inspirations or life lessons or whatever else. But it's not going to be cookie cutter. It's not always going to fit your life perfectly or your ideas perfectly or your goals perfectly. So leaving that room for interpretation, I think that's important when people kind of let you know that there is a healthy dose of that in life. Like, I'm trying to think of an example, but my mind's kind of going a little bit now. I'm still waking up, to be fair. But there are so many instances where you've just kind of got to figure it out as you go. It's always going to be different for everybody. There you go. There, my mind just threw me one. Thank you. So, like when you hear about a friend that's, say you're single and you hear about a friend that's just got a new partner or whatever else, the single person always asks, "How do you meet?" And it might be out of just interest or whatever else, but I think there's always that element of personal interest where it's like, cool, I want to go looking in this, like if there's somebody that's looking for a relationship there, I'm going to go looking in a similar place because if you found someone there, I'm going to find somebody there. And that's very rarely the case for a lot of people. Like there are a lot of people that online dating works for and online dating doesn't work for. There's a lot of people that like, I don't know, speed dating or just face to face, like, or just random encounters work for them. But that's not going to work for everybody else. Like, I guess you'd have to have more confidence to do just a random approach. And that in itself brings a whole element of things with it. And if you're going speed dating, you're on a allotted times. That brings, like, everything has its variability, is what I'm trying to say. I'm just going a very long way about it. Right. So we can change, but there's just so many variables along the way. No matter what aspect of life it may be, whether it's career, your fitness, your relationships, your mental state, whatever it may be. Like sometimes the road is long, sometimes the road's short, but often the road is long. And you figure out so much along the way. Like not just about yourself, just about the world and at least for like myself, my awareness has changed so much. Like there's aspects where I feel like I'm aware of so much, but then I'm instantly reminded how damn ignorant I am and how much is going on that you just cannot conceive of. Like I come up with this mental exercise of like try mentally picture two circles in your head. Fairly easy, right? Mentally picture six circles in your head. Still fairly easy. Mentally picture 20 circles in your head. Getting a little bit harder, but possible. You could do 4 rows of five, whatever else. Then picture 10,000 rings in your head. Eventually, you just lose the kind of, even now, my mind's trying to do it and it, to the point where it has to zoom out to try to get that many things. It's like, okay, try to find a way to do rows and columns or even still, what are you going to do? 1,000 rows? Like, n- like, at some point, your mind just cannot conceive of things. But if you was to physically lay out that 10,000 rows of rings or whatever else in physical reality, you would then be able to perceive it because it's outside of yourself. So sometimes we need to get outside of ourselves in order to figure out what something looked like or the reality of it or how things work. Like there is a lot of people, I think I'm one of them, I guess, that sometimes I have to get things out of my head in order to figure them out. Because in my head, they're always moving. Sometimes they come in and out or whatever else. So as soon as I write it down or put it on paper, draw it or whatever else, like as soon as I have it outside of myself, it gets far easier to kind of stop, analyze, look at different aspects of it or whatever else. But it takes that step of getting outside of myself. And sometimes that's easier to come across than others. Like, as you can see, I go all over the place. My mind is very much like that, probably a lot faster because my mouth can only move so fast. But there is so much that is just variable, that is just personal experience and everything else. Like I say, like, everybody starts at a different point in life. And there are going to be so many commonalities that are true, but then there are going to be so many variables that are different as well. So you've just kind of got to figure it out as you go. And I d by saying that, I'm like, John, is there an even point to this episode? But at the same time, I think there is. Like, it is that reality of like, sometimes you're going to be a little bit hopeless, and that's okay. Like, we all go through these areas in our lives that we're just uncertain. Like nobody has a script. Like you hear about people with and without money struggling with life and succeeding in life. You hear people going from broke to rich and from rich to broke. Like there is so many ebbs and flows in life. when you take the time to understand them and that, hopefully you can navigate them a little bit better. Like the sea is always going to ebb and flow. But once you know how to navigate the seas and everything else, you can use those ebbs and flows and you can sail the seas. You've got to do the same with life. You've got to find out the ebbs and flows, the waves, the this, the that's, and figure out your way to navigate life. And everybody's going to be slightly different. Everybody's boat is a bit different. So you just kind of got to find your way over time. And I know that's probably not the best advice or what people would want to hear, but it is really and truly the best advice. Like, you've got to ebb and flow with life. You've got to learn where you can and take different lessons from here and there. Nothing's going to fit your life perfectly. But there are things that you're going to be able to kind of jerry rig into your life, make work, and over time things will improve. You will change. But just make sure you're changing to be true to you, because we've got enough of other people. The world made you as you are, so be you. Don't be afraid of that. Like, there is a unique thing inside of each of us. There is a unique way that we view the world. Like, there is no guarantee that each of us see color the same way, hear sound the same way. So use that to interpret the universe your own way and share that with the world. Communicate how you see the world and your ideas of the world and what you want to do with your life and how you see things. Like, there is value to other people. There is, like, if I could jump in most people's heads, I probably would, just out of curiosity, just to see how they think, how they see the world. Like, there's no, there's nothing to guarantee that my experience has any bearing on anybody else's experience in terms of like truth. So my truth doesn't necessarily have to be somebody else's truth. That's why, at least that's what I believe. Like, so again, there's going to be variables. Like, if somebody else was sitting in this room, they'd also confirm there's four walls or whatever else. But in terms of the actual perception of that, it's completely different. Like, if somebody was shorter than me, they might perceive this room to be a lot bigger than, or a little bit bigger than I perceive it to be. If somebody's taller than me, they may perceive it to be smaller than I am. So, like, there's so many things that can change our perception of the world around us. I think it's important to always leave room for that. And it's an easy thing to kind of trip people up along the way if you're like, oh, this is the way the world is, or this is the way life is, or this is the way fitness is, or this is the way mental health is. But then there's so many variables along the way because they're trying to fit themselves on this rigid path, but there are no rigid paths. We all vary, we all veer, we all have ups and downs and lefts and rights and spins around sometimes. Life's messy. Like, but you go on and you change, like, the amount of instances you change over life. Like, genuinely, if you used to think about it, at one point you was a little child, you was a baby in a womb, for God's sake. Like, if we take it all the way back, and you had no perception of the true world around you. You could only perceive your mother's womb and maybe her heartbeat and her voice and this, that. You couldn't see light, you couldn't breathe air or whatever else. So to you, you wouldn't have known that there was anything outside of that. And we're very much like that in our next stage of life. But then we've continued to grow throughout this womb of the world, I guess, that it keeps it keeps changing and we don't know what's going to happen once we kind of leave this womb. Like, yeah, it could all come to an end, but I don't know, I kind of doubt it. Like, I think there's far more chance that we go on and experience the world or life or the universe or something or reality in a different way, in a different form. Like, I think we just keep kind of cascading through reality's life or whatever it may be. But yeah, I'm going on a fair few tangents, so let me wrap this bad boy up. The seed for this episode is believe you can change, but believe it's not always going to be easy. You've got to put in the work. You've got to ask yourself some tough questions. And you might not always want to change. You might not always be ready to change. Like, sometimes life hasn't got bad enough or things haven't got kind of desperate enough for you to change. And that's a sad reality, but it is true. So sometimes you really need to take a hard look at yourself, take a hard look at your life and your reasons for changing. Maybe your reasons ain't deep enough. And you need to go back to that board and find out why you really want to do something. Again, it's hard and it's not always going to be easy to ask ourselves these questions, but it's bloody important. to give it a try, and hopefully it does something for you, because I know it has me. All the best, and I'll catch you on the next one.